Hello, everyone, and welcome in to the Endgame Syndicate Roundtable number 2. A new voice for you here amongst the Roundtable Syndicate. They heard about my 19th place finish in the Puppy 4, and they said, all right, Davis Maddock, he's the guy that we got to have to really finalize this Avengers-esque crew of DFS and best ball crushers. Obviously, guys, what I'm here for, a little bit of liveliness. We're going to have some fun here on the channel. We're going to answer some questions. We're going to figure out, look, if I turn in a really sick DFS season 6 months from now, I can't really imagine much better marketing than we had Davis host some of our shows for a season, and it turned him into a great mid-stakes crusher. How's everyone doing tonight? Did we get all of our Major League Baseball lineups in? Despite the trade deadline, I saw the Blue Jays made a trade. Washington made a trade. I mean, a lot of very small moves around the edges of Major League Baseball.
I didn't. Well, no one did because Washington's not out yet. But I did get like 80% of my process. I usually like to do it a little more sim amount and stuff. But I got it in with the Houston trade too. I don't know if you saw that one, Davis.
I did not. I've been in Oregon for the last 4 days. I didn't realize until the second day I was there that I couldn't play contests because I registered for contests the night before. So I, was making sure I get my tier credits. And then I woke up on Saturday morning to go for a hike. And I was like, all right, I got to get my Olympic men's basketball lineups in. And it turns out that I can archer. That's actually a great place to start. Any of you guys can take this one. These niche contests that pop up like this when there are global events, Olympics, World Cup. We just got done with the European Championships and the Copa America. Do you bother building data sets and entering these contests at all? Do you fire a little bit based on vibes if like the USA does well? And we're like, I remember the USA Netherlands World Cup knockout stage. I believe they did 25K to first for that. But do any of you guys mess with these? Basically, the slates where the data is either going to be non-existent or sketchy at best.
I don't. I'm really lazy about it. Like getting into anything that I don't already play. It's probably a leak because I'm sure there's money there, but I'm really bad about it.
The only thing I've done like that is because there's a lot of volume you can get down, which is March Madness bracket pools.
Sure.
I mean, like 3 years in a row, I was like, oh, I gotta do something, and then like I missed it, and I'm like, I gotta do it something, and then I missed it the next year. But I finally got something in for that this year. Lost a ton of money, but
congrats.
But you got your money in good.
I
but
did.
As long as you get your
theoretically
money in good. Yeah. Well, how could you know, right? How could you
The problem with that is the DFS March Madness, like the GPPs were getting like smaller and smaller every year. Like they used to be like fairly big.
Yeah, I only ever did the brackets, the pools.
But to answer your question for me, like those kind of smaller sports, the way I would do it, or I probably the same with Dan, maybe not. He could probably handle a little easier than me. It's just way too much, way too hard. Now, someone who knows ball, maybe I could understand where you'd know what minutes they're gonna play. Maybe somehow.
But you would have to have real opinions about like South Sudan's backup center.
Opinions.
Oh my god, yeah.
Now, again, coming from this is totally observational of me, but my experience in the summer soccer tournaments is that's like pure ball knowing for me. Like I don't care about the projections, none of that stuff. Obviously the fields have gotten a little bit harder because there is more data for that stuff now, but there are like 5 super users in these summer soccer tournaments that I would guarantee maybe they don't have sims, but they have something built to generate very good projections for these tournaments that other people are not using. Specifically for, I think what it would have to be worth for you guys would be to build the data set and to be able to use it for showdowns as well. So you'd be able to play like 20 slates a week plus the mains.
Maybe sports betting. They might be sports bettors too. Like that would make sense.
Well, yeah. the one soccer guy I know he was sports betting first. They launched, I'm forgetting, you guys might know his name. I'm completely forgetting his name, but he's like a super crusher, and he was sports betting first.
The guy you accused of colluding in three mans, Saramac?
Yes, and his buddy. I mean, I didn't accuse him. He was colluding in three mans. It's not an accusation. He just was colluding in three
I'm
mans.
pretty sure it's an accusation.
Well,
I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
yeah, it is what it is. But I would have to imagine that an Olympic men's basketball slate, how much of a leap, I guess, because you guys would just not have any clue on the minutes, so the sims would not be reliable at all.
Yeah.
What the
Imagine
date
if you're gonna
either. Go ahead.
Yeah, I imagine if you're trying to get down a lot, it probably makes more sense to sports bet than do the DFS
Yeah, especially with the niche
because of
stuff.
contest sizing.
Yeah. For
I imagine you probably can't get like more than 5 or 10K down, whereas
5K probably even too much,
yeah.
I would bet.
That's like if you're going to get a lot down, your time and energy is going to be worth quite a lot as it is likely. So I think it would make more sense to sports bet it.
It's also kind of a weird way, a good place for content sites that kind of makes sense because it's kind of ridiculous to put in that much work for yourself unless you're going to bet a ton. But doing preseason football for like ETR actually kind of everyone wins, kind of. So like I could see that like doing it for a content site and then making money that way. But I don't know. Putting in a ton of work for like 3 games a year is just seems like the wrong idea.
It would have to be, I suppose it would have to be something that you knew would be repeatable, and something like the Olympics or the World Cup or whatever is not repeatable. But if you build the bones for preseason football, I mean, honestly, if you are getting enough down, you could just pay someone to know the ball for you at that level. Like for you guys, if you were, I guess it would have to be an insane amount, but you could be like, hey, Cody, instead of doing this for ETR and publishing the data for everyone, what if you just got all these notes for me and did these projections for me and stopped publishing it on ETR? Like that's an extreme example and not possible. But I guess if you maybe had an account, like a bearded account that you could get 10K down per Olympic men's basketball or Olympic women's basketball game, then maybe it would make sense on top of that.
I suppose it'd be tough though to find someone that would fit, and it would make sense. They're that good, and you could pay them enough to make it worth their while. But like, if you look at like Rufus Peabody, right, and like that arrangement he has, I'm speculating from him, doing so many podcasts and stuff, is, he does all that stuff for PGA or whatever, and then he has another guy who's doing all the betting. So like some arrangement like that kind of makes sense. But again, with the nature of it being so infrequently, I don't know if you could even find a Rufus worth doing 3 games a year. The Olympics even more ridiculous, once every 4 years.
That's that would be something interesting to talk about, the value of these no wagers, because obviously Rufus was sort of in the news. David Purdom from ESPN wrote the story about his massive no wagers because he lost. What was it? He ended up with hedging out like 350,000 on Bryson's no, which brings the question of like kind of what Yuta was saying about the value of your time and your money. Like, sure, maybe your numbers will show edges on things like that, but the edge is it's kind of like a violation of Kelly, where the risk of ruin is so high, and instead of putting 350K in Bryson, no wagers, you'd be better. I mean, you literally would just be better off taking 8% every year in, the VIX or whatever.
You think maybe he's making more than that? I'm assuming all those were Betfair matches, right?
I believe that's what he said. I don't know 100%.
Yeah, I mean, what other market are you going to get a no doesn't win 380,000 down? I don't think they. I don't think
Circa lets you bet no on golf outrights, but I think that's definitely not their limits.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's a match exchange. there's probably other benefits for him doing that too, like being the house. He's essentially the house, right? You know, like if he's got a $50 million bankroll or something, you know, $380,000 is not going to bother him, and he's just got donks betting into his lines as the house.
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking a bunch of, and there's also the thing of like, if you have, this would speak to being the house, but if you have 15 no wagers for a tournament, you know, you're capped on what you can lose because there's only one winner of a tournament. So it looks a lot worse when you just look at his Excel spreadsheet of what he's wagered and be like, you wagered $4.2 million to win 35,000 or whatever. But that was the thought that I had. I was like, Rufus, if this fund is that rich, there are ways to maximize those edges for a lower risk of ruin.
Then being the house at a sports book sounds pretty fucking sweet to me. Yeah, I mean, I bet he's making plenty of money. And that, you know, anything that shows me the argument that the match books coming to America are not going to be this, you know, what's it called, utopian sportsbook situation for recreational bettors that people think it is. It's going to be way more like the heads up tables at the end of, you know, Poker Stars at the peak or something, where it's just the end bosses and that's all you can get down in a heads up match. You're going to be betting against Rufus's Bryson lines.
What are the heads up streets in DFS like right now? Like, you know, obviously gone are the glory days of getting 10Ks versus Denny Hamlin, or you know, sniping Sahil's NHL head-to-heads or whatever. But is there any value now in owning the lobby? Do you even check the 10Ks or the 5Ks on any of these sites to see if anyone's posted, or is it like beyond dead, just deader than dead in high stakes head-to-heads?
I could talk about that most. Right now, there's only like probably you can count them on one hand how many people are participating. And I can't really speak on the head-to-head lobby, but I imagine that's even more dead. Because I think any decent reg would just avoid the game.
Sure.
And then any like kind of bigger fish doesn't want to go head-to-head. They'd rather 3x or 4x. So I'll fill decently on like the 10K 3-man, but I stopped posting 10K head-to-heads a while ago because they never filled. And I'm super procrastinating when it comes to getting stuff in. So it was better for me to just not even bother with those. But the 3-mans, 4-mans are pretty good. If we like rewind to say 2022, they were probably even better since we had Jacksonville Jaguars sponsors in the lobby, or other way, Jags were sponsoring DFS players. But it's I would say there's action still pretty consistently. It's just not pretty wild, and it comes and goes.
And I assume it's not the glory days of guys in the NBA who got ruled out, you know, the worst pitcher of the night type thing, stacking the 5 Miami Marlins because they were going to the game or whatever. Like, is anyone registering for a 10K without, you know, having a Rudge Grinders account? I would guess it's very unlikely.
Oh no, there are. It's just you can't count on it. Yeah. But anyone biting is still not that great. But
I played the Rainmaker a decent amount of time, but like even, you know, 7 years ago, the only time you'd get like a donkey lineup is like the guy forgets the reg, like Yuda fucking sleeps in or something. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty rare you get donkeys even back then at 5. Am I wrong, Yuda? What do you think? You playing way more than me.
Back then, I wasn't playing that heavy, like in like 2018 or so. I guess I was, but like I don't remember. I actually remember being a little more competitive back then. It was like we had better games, like better competition overall. And then over time, some of the like older guys who are like 20 who started in like 2013, they sort of went away, and no one really filled that void, I guess, other than myself. And after that, there hasn't been any like true regulars.
Did you ever hear my idea? I think I told you this, where I want them to change or add like a Zoom poker type of idea to cash games, where you just enter a pool and then you randomly get entered in whatever it is. Let's say it's 10 mans, and then they just randomly pick 10 man from the pool of 100 or 500 people who enter. I feel like casuals and like regs even would be way more willing to enter that than the current setup where they just see your name, and maybe somebody else's, and like I'm not going to play that. But like if I get a chance where I might get like lucky and get in a bunch of ones with the casuals, maybe I'll enter it.
Yeah. I mean, I do like that idea, but I think for a matching system, you have to match volume too. So if someone's posting like 50K and you're posting 10K, you kind of have like an 80% chance of matching with the 50K guy.
Right. Well,
it's still a button clicking problem. Like at the end of the day, it's still what do I click on? The contest that's called the Millionaire Maker, or scroll to cash games, filter my size, filter my dollar amount, click on. I guess maybe they could make it a new display, like how Zoom Poker works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, where it's its own tab type thing.
Yeah, it's its own tab, and then you get a drop down how many entries you want to do. Here's how it works in my head. And then each round, each time is one entry is one round. So like let's say 10 donkeys enter one entry. Just because Yuda entered 150 doesn't mean he gets all of those. It's one round. We all get a shot at it. Then the next round, everyone who entered twice gets a shot at it. Then everyone who entered three times gets another round. And then if you enter 150 and only 4 other people enter 150, you guys are playing against each other at the end there. Something like that.
So it still ends up being reg versus reg
at the end, but in the beginning, which is where the casuals and like if you're a regular who doesn't want to play against the studs, you just enter 3. And then you got, you're like, whatever. After that,
how does the blocking feature work in that? I mean, obviously the block. No one has talked about the blocking feature on DraftKings on a DFS live stream in 5 years. It obviously shows the day and age that I came up in DFS. The head-to-head lobby on DraftKings does work in a Zoom Poker style way, where if you do not cancel your contests, like that's what I do. I'm very lazy about creating my contests, and I don't block anyone. Like I don't care. So I end up 90% of my head-to-head action for NFL will be Zoom Poker style auto match versus whoever. And that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, that shows you how dead the cash games are and why they should do my idea or something similar, like try. I
mean, that's incentives though. Like what could possibly incentivize them to make cash
more rake
strategy?
Yeah.
More rake is better. I
and also less variance for your customers, especially your shitty ones.
It's true. I love that personally. I love the lower variance of NFL head.
Instead of they win, once every fucking 20 times, they're gonna win 45% of the time or something.
All right, so it's Major League Baseball. Like we are actively having players being traded or in or out, and I was just thinking, does that in and of itself, knowing that lineups are going to be different than expected, that matchups for the starting pitchers are going to be different than expected, do you think that there are small edges to be found that way? Like if you can get your numbers updated the quickest, or you have access to, there's a couple guys I know the Braves guys, it's his first ever career start. Some just like weird instances like that. Are these slates with like extra disruptions or variance? Are those going to sim out as like higher? Like you will have more lineups that are plus EV than average, do you think?
I would think so, yeah. I think speed is definitely a thing. Especially in sports where it's usually not a thing. Like
right.
Usually in baseball, you're not scrambling that much. So on the rare times you are, if you're quick, that's probably worth a lot. But on the other hand, it doesn't come up that often. So
Yeah, and also with baseball, like you don't have the same sort of interaction between teammates. Like I think
there's no wowie.
yeah, like there's a bigger edge I think in like NBA where
Right.
if you can be the first one to figure out what this guy's usage rate is going to be on his new team, how he's going to affect his teammates and all that, it can create a pretty big edge. Whereas baseball, you're still just plugging in whatever the new lineup is.
Right. With baseball, you're hoping for like a scratch 8 minute before the team plays on a relatively highly owned player, and hoping people don't swap them out in time because they're not checking for baseball the way they check,
or like
check for NBA. Yeah.
Like not trade related, but like the Chris Sale game the other day where it went from weather looks fine to this game's not going to play, and it was like 15% or whatever.
All right, we got a question. Did any of you guys do the underdog solo shot? Why or why not did you advance? I'm assuming that this is one of the dailies or season long underdog contest. I did not play in this one. I've never done MLB on underdog.
I did not.
It's on the dailies, but not the tournaments.
That seems season long. NBA and MLB seems like just insane levels of variance because of one, because how could you control for a pitching matchup literally 6 months in the future, and the injury stuff for baseball is just going to be so insane.
Yeah.
Dailies is a pain in the ass too. I just don't want to sit there.
Yeah,
and do it.
Dailies is one of those things.
It's a labor of love for sure.
It feels like I should play just because like I can make some extra money, but like it's just so time consuming.
It's really
I did best ball on DraftKings, but it was sort of getting ready, part of my process, just like researching. So that was the first time I actually did best ball on a consistent basis ever. But I just auto drafted since I imagined stacking wouldn't be too important, like just the variance of a game.
Yeah,
even in the
why don't
championship
you
week,
use the Endgame draft caddy instead of auto drafting? It's free for you. You can use it.
Yeah. So I was just like stacking ranking or taking rankings, and then I imagine just advancing is enough to like cover the rake and not really expecting anything. But it was good.
For NFL, you were auto drafting after creating.
No, for MLB this year.
Yeah. So
I might do the same for NFL this year.
I think for golf and for baseball and probably basketball, I would assume when you factor in the value of your time, it might even be more plus EV to auto draft. No, I think you're going to miss some things that the ball knowers know and are planning on. Like I know one thing for NBA for best ball stuff is just like giving a huge boost to younger guys, like guys who are not going to be just sitting out for weeks at the end of the season. That's one of them. I mean, I don't think you could really do anything like that for baseball, but the age thing you could definitely bake into NBA rankings.
Also, the number of games that a team's going to play in the postseason period was really big.
Yeah.
At least the year I did it.
Davis, we have a like game theory toy game best ball video coming out tomorrow from Dan. Can you wrap your head around how an equilibrium strategy in best ball, how would that work? I'm just interested in what you think would come out of it.
Like a Nash equilibrium.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, don't pretend like I'm good at math. Like, I'm definitely not. I just have read enough poker books to kind of approximate that. An equilibrium strategy for me drafting 150 entries, or is this related to just how you would just draft one team?
It could just be for one entry. Yeah.
I literally could not even begin, Dan.
Well, I'll tell you what's fun about it. So I got to my first toy game with 2 rounds in it. And so this is so stupid. It's like, but it's already really hard. and I had to do a lot of math to figure out the answer and check that that the software I wrote was actually computing the right thing. So like it gets interesting really quickly, which I think is kind of a cool feature because the interaction of like the draft and the fact that you're competing against this huge collection of lineups makes for some really interesting dynamics. So I had a fun time. I mathed really hard today. I'm not that good at math either, but I'm pretty stubborn, so
I'm not stubborn. I'm not stubborn or talented with
you're better than Davis, trust me.
Yes. Anyone who's ever listened to me try to do live math on a podcast knows it's not my specialty. So the thing that I find about best ball theory that is so fascinating is all of my background for any of that stuff for toy games or thinking about games theoretically comes from No Limit Hold'em, more or less, which is similar in the sense from a tournament calculation of like you're playing against all these other people, but there's such a difference between hands and entries because your entry cannot be duplicated. So the math of how do you get to the best hand? It's like it's doing poker math without knowing the hand rankings, essentially, like guessing at the hand rankings and being like, I think that the Kelsey Mahomes stack is the aces, but it could be Jack 7 off. You really do not know, which I think is fascinating.
It is. I think best ball. What's cool for me is you can make drafting choices that are plus EV, but the actual realized EV, you're very much at the mercy of everyone else in your draft room. So,
yes.
I mean, you pick this player and you really, really want him to go with another player. And if you're lucky enough to get the other player, it hugely boosts your EV. But maybe there's only a 30% chance that you're actually going to get to pair that guy. So you have to weigh the odds of that actually working out for you.
That's a big thing amongst us nerds who spend a lot of time focusing on this very unsolved game, and everyone kind of has their opinion on, basically in our parlance, it would be, we call it pushing it. So like the great example this year is CJ Stroud. I believe CJ Stroud's ADP is like 75, but all of his pass catchers, his relevant pass catchers go before. Now, I would basically say you are almost dead to win $1.5 million if you have Nico Collins and Tank Dell and you don't have Stroud, and those are the guys you need because there will be a team like yours that has CJ Stroud on it.
Right.
So that's insanely valuable, but you also know from observation that CJ Stroud is one of the most frequent players in the pool who goes well at, like, if he had a min max, if we could measure min max, he would have one of the largest min maxes in the pool. You can see him go in the 80s and the 90s sometimes. And so you really just have to say, am I okay with this team being dead? Am I okay with this being a negative EV team to gain 20, 30, 40 cents of expected value by getting him with my 8th round pick instead of my 6th round pick? And I land on it's better to sacrifice 9 teams to get the one team with the extra boosted EV, but I'm also doing like 1,000 teams. So for me, it makes more sense to try and get the super lottery tickets as opposed. But I mean, that could be wrong. I'd wonder what you guys think about that.
Yeah, it's really hard to compute these things for real games. I mean, that's sort of the motivation for doing toy games in the first place. Is like, make it so simple that you can actually answer these questions with authority, right? Because in real games, you're just guessing. So hopefully you're building intuition, but there just has to be a lot of guesswork with this kind of stuff.
I was going to ask Adam, what do you think about pushing it? What's your sense on that?
I had actually not thought about it at all. And as you were talking, I was thinking that I felt dumb for basically never attempting it. Like,
you're such a Chad best ball player. You just show up. You're like, these fucking nerds. They do their 4-hour podcast about this dumb game, and I'm going to show up and we're going to advance the same number of teams, and whoever wins is going to win.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think about it. Like, I think what you're talking about is like a really interesting idea and strategy that, like, for me in that situation, it's just like, oh, good, Stroud's still here in the 6th. Like, I got the guy that I wanted, where I'm fine taking him, and never even crosses my mind that I could just like keep waiting and occasionally get essentially a really, really good team.
Well, that's kind of Brian's deal, where, Brian will be like, like 90% of DFS chatter, like these shows that we all do and everything, they're astrology. You know, it is being like, this is kind of my hunch. This is sort of how I feel. This is the way to win the slate. This is my lean. You know, oh, you can't play. Who's that Yankees first baseman who's crushing, like Brendan Rice, AJ Rice, something Rice, like 2 weeks ago, like Brendan Rice. Yeah, you can't play him at 20% at $3,900 on DraftKings.com because he's 2 owned. You need to play Vinny P because he's 8% owned or whatever. And yeah, it is. But like best ball is all that. I mean, not all. Maybe best ball is 90% that, where it's like, this is just kind of the vibe. This is what I feel. But like, as Dan is explaining, to get to a definitive answer, you have to go so much simpler. You have to delve so much smaller than the whole experiment.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of why I don't think about best ball more, is like, I don't think I'm playing optimally, but like so many of the strategies or ideas that like I see people talk about, it just comes back to like, there's so much variance and so much volatility and everything that like, I'm fine just kind of drafting the guys that I want where I want them and letting everything play out.
What are you showing us here, Brian?
It's funny you mention it because I just came out with a video yesterday or whatever on how I adjust for ownership. So to answer that question where you said like Brendan Rice or whatever, where someone's 20%, I would say, like you were mentioning, like, well, how do you know? Because like, you know, on these old Roto Grinder shows or whatever, like he's 25% owned, so you should go under. It's like, well, how do you know you should go under? How do you know you should go over? Like, what number is right?
Because I fucking know, you nerd.
Right. So I give one way to do it that I think is pretty useful, and maybe people can get some ideas just thinking about it this way. There's I plan on doing maybe one more. It's also useful for adjusting projections and how you should think about that, in my opinion. And you could do it just with an optimizer. You don't even need a sim. So you could do it in Excel if you really want to. So the latest one I did, people might want to check out, but I wanted to show, we never really show the videos we have so far. So there's that one. Nerdy's got his Playing with Toys series, which that stuff was all DFS related. He's got a 3-parter called Solo Ball. It'll make sense when you see it. It's just a certain toy game, but also 4 parts on our original series, kind of building from the ground up. There's also guys who don't use any of these things, and they're called ball knowers. Yuda's got, what, 2 videos, Yuda, on some ball knowing topics?
The projection is knowing the ball. That's what I've heard.
Yeah,
there's one, but there's a lot of discussion about these sports ideas in the other ones too.
Right, and you actually show like how you use Fantasy Cruncher on a typical MLE slate, right?
Yeah, there's one for that.
I did a couple on Sims. Oh, here it is. Yeah, that's you reviewed one of your lineups, that one, too. And we're just getting started, but that's what's the videos behind the scenes. We also have the draft caddy going too now on Endgame. That I know people seem to like quite a bit. Davis has been using it lately. But I think
by the way, I've been meaning, we haven't been on a show since I started using it. I mean, it is quite nice. I can't really believe I've drafted, 5,000 best ball teams in my life without having ever used the tool. Like, my brain is really good at drafting best ball teams, but it's not as good as just having a tool to create the shortcuts for me. It's pretty insane.
Yeah. I definitely could not memorize all that shit with my best ball teams.
Can you just like dream of the underdog interface? And
yeah, here I'll right now I'm in like 175 slow drafts, like not including all the fasts I'm doing. I mean, right, like obviously, I mean, this is kind of outside of what you guys do. but there's like real brand equity for me right now in winning one of these contests. Like if this is like I go solo, I do my own thing, I got a channel and I ship 100K, or I win one of these contests, like it's like that is it's like getting a YouTube view. Like a YouTube view is one thing, but like it's worth multiples because YouTube's so good for marketing and SEO, yada yada. It's like that would be worth every dollar I win. It would be worth like 3x future dollars as in terms of marketing. So I gotta just like, it sucks right now. I'm not gonna lie, but you kind of just gotta push through.
You don't think it would help us too, but
Absolutely, dude. The Endgame Syndicate logo. I'm having my background reworked in the Endgame. Although we might need to get you guys a new logo that Brian didn't create in ChatGPT.
How dare you?
But it's going in the background of my YouTube overlay and with the promo code and everything. But yeah, obviously it would be huge for the Draft Caddy. Like we taught this motherfucker how to draft good teams. Subscribe.
And another thing you get is we have a Discord where we all talk and answer questions, and each one of us has our own private channel where sometimes Yuda will release his ownership. I will do the same. Adam does the same. Though that's just when we do it, though. It's not part of the subscription. But we have roundtable questions that everyone asks. And we're going to do that behind the paywall, so we should probably get over there and wrap up this stream and go private. Yeah? Does everyone agree with that?
All right. Let's go private. Brian, you want me to end the stream?
Yeah, why don't you end it?
One? All right. Everyone, thanks for listening. The next time we do this, I'll tweet the link out earlier, and I'll get some more specific questions, and we can continue to work through this, and we will we'll build winners. That's what we do at the Endgame Syndicate. We build the thought process behind winning. So now we are going to go and do the members only paywall roundtable questions, which by the way, if you want to submit questions to these fine gentlemen, you can do that in the Endgame Discord, and we'll see you next time.